The UHS Trailblazer shuddered as it dropped out of FTL, its aging hull groaning like an old warhorse long past retirement. On the bridge, Captain Jack Reynolds leaned back in his chair, boots propped up on the console, watching the swirling gas giant below. Beyond it, silhouetted against the system's pale sun, a fleet of alien warships hung in formation, gleaming and pristine. "Well," Jack muttered, scratching his stubbled jaw, "they sure look pretty." Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, hunched over the engineering console, let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah? Let's see if they still look pretty when our targeting system actually works for once." She slapped the side of the panel, coaxing the flickering display back into existence. Behind them, Dr. Ben Carter, the ship's xenolinguist and resident optimist, adjusted his glasses and clasped his hands. "Maybe we won't need targeting systems. Let's not assume hostility." Jack shot him a sideways look. "Ben, we're responding to a distress signal. Colony went silent 2 days ago. Any guesses why?" Ben hesitated. "An accident? A natural disaster?" Chief Gunnery Officer Jake Jax Dawson snorted from his weapons station. "Or, and hear me out, maybe it's the fleet of hostile warships parked in orbit like they own the place." Jack sighed, straightening in his seat. "All right, let's not assume the worst. Open a channel. Let's see if they talk before they shoot." A moment later, the main display flickered to life, revealing the regal, angular face of Overlord Kavaris of the Zurvrak Dominion. His golden exoskeletal armor gleamed under artificial light, and his mandibles curled in what might have been a sneer or indigestion. "This is Captain Jack Reynolds of the United Human Ship Trailblazer," Jack began, keeping his tone easy. "We received a distress call from the colony on Rhea 7. We'd like to know what happened." Kavaris tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "Ah, humans." His voice was thick with condescension. "Yes, we intercepted your colony's transmission. They were informed that this world now belongs to the Dominion. They refused to submit." Jack's fingers tightened on the armrest. "And now?" Kavaris let out a buzzing chuckle. "Now the colony is silent." A beat of silence passed on the bridge. Sarah muttered something under her breath. Jax's hands flexed over his console. Ben's face fell. Jack exhaled through his nose. "That's a real shame." Kavaris continued, oblivious to, or perhaps enjoying, the tension. "And yet instead of sending a proper warship, your people sent this?" His mandibles clicked together in something that might have been a laugh. "A rusted, outdated vessel with mismatched hull plating? Is this some kind of, how do humans say, joke?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go." Jax grinned. "I love when they underestimate us." Jack didn't rise to the insult. Instead, he simply folded his hands in his lap and smiled. "Well, Overlord, looks can be deceiving." Kavaris scoffed. "Indeed. Your people are famous for bluster. But know this, Captain. I will allow you to leave unharmed. You have 10 minutes to retreat before I reduce your vessel to scrap." Jack gave a slow nod. "Mighty generous." Kavaris leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Make no mistake, human. Your ship is weak. It is no match for the Dominion." The transmission cut off. Silence lingered for a beat. Then Jax cracked his knuckles. "So we fighting or what?" Ben sighed. "Do we have to?" Sarah scoffed. "Ben, they wiped out the colony." Jack rose from his seat. "We don't run, not from butchers." He turned to Sarah. "How bad is our weapons system?" Sarah grimaced. "Bad. I've got 2 missile tubes that mostly work, energy cannons that need constant recalibration, and a targeting system that forgets what it's aiming at every 20 minutes. Jack smirked. "So, business as usual," she huffed. "Yeah, except they have weapons that actually function." Jack nodded. "Then we improvise." He turned to Jax. "Think you can fight blind if needed?" Jax cracked his neck. "You know I love a challenge." Jack's gaze shifted to Ben. "And you? Any chance we can bluff them?" Ben adjusted his glasses. I could imply we have a doomsday weapon. They might hesitate. Jack grinned. Perfect. Let's give them something to think about. He sat back down, tapping the intercom. All hands, battle stations. The ship rumbled as systems flickered to life, shields straining under the effort. Jack took a breath. The odds were grim, but that had never stopped humanity before. And if the Zurvrak thought the Trailblazer was weak, they were in for a hell of a surprise. A low klaxon hummed through the UHS Trailblazer as battle stations came online. The ship vibrated, not from enemy fire, but from the sheer strain of forcing its outdated systems into combat mode. On the bridge, Captain Jack Reynolds watched the Zurvrak Dominion fleet adjust its formation. The alien ships were sleek, symmetrical, and surgically efficient. By contrast, the Trailblazer looked like someone had welded spare parts together and hoped for the best. A soft curse came from Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell as she slammed a wrench against the targeting console. I swear, if this ship had a personality, it would be a stubborn old mule. Then it's got the perfect captain, Jax Dawson quipped, fingers dancing over the weapons panel. Jack grinned. Flattery will get you promoted. Dr. Ben Carter let out an exasperated sigh. Or killed. He adjusted his headset, scanning the alien transmission logs. I'd like to remind everyone that talking is still an option. Jack snorted. Yeah? You think Overlord Bugface wants to chat? Ben hesitated, then muttered, Probably not. Jack's fingers tapped against the armrest. All right. Time to be unpredictable. Sarah, get us into that asteroid field. Sarah glanced up, eyes narrowing. You want me to fly this heap into an asteroid field? Not just into it, Jack said with a smirk. Through it. She groaned, but fired the engines. The Trailblazer lurched forward, slipping toward the dense cluster of tumbling rock and debris. Behind them, Kavaris's fleet hesitated. They're not following, Ben noted. Jack leaned forward. Of course not. Their ships are too precise, too rigid. They're afraid of losing formation. Jax whistled. You mean they don't want to scratch the paint? Jack's grin widened. Exactly. Then an alert pulsed on the console. They're firing, Sarah shouted. Jack gripped his chair. Evasive! The ship rolled hard, dodging the first plasma barrage. The second volley skimmed past their shields, rocking the hull. Shields at 40%, Sarah called out. That's before we start scraping against asteroids, by the way. Jack ignored her complaint. Jax, what do we have that still works? Jax's fingers danced across his screen. 2 missiles, but their targeting's busted. Energy cannons need a manual lock, and, we've got about 50 tons of mining explosives in cargo. Jack's brow lifted. Mining explosives? Sarah cut in, already catching on. You're not suggesting... Oh, I absolutely am, Jack said. Jax, can you launch the explosives and detonate remotely? Jax's grin turned positively wicked. Captain, I love the way you think. As the Trailblazer wove through the asteroid field, Jax manually loaded cargo bay ejectors, preparing to drop the charges. They'll never expect it, Jack mused. They think we're weak. Let's show them we're clever instead. Ben ran a hand down his face. I still feel like diplomacy was an option. Jax punched the release. Too late for that. Chunks of mining explosives drifted into the asteroid field, invisible against the natural debris. Jack watched the enemy fleet edge closer, still refusing to enter fully. Then, with a single button press, boom! A chain of brilliant detonations ripped through the asteroids, sending burning rock and shrapnel in every direction. The Zurvrak ships, caught off guard, scrambled to adjust. Too late. One of their smaller ships took a direct hit, its shields collapsing. Another clipped an asteroid and spun wildly off course. The Zurvrak fleet finally moved, shifting aggressively as they realized they'd been tricked. They're coming in, Ben warned. Jack pointed at Sarah. Time for some creative flying. Sarah gritted her teeth. Hold on to something. The trailblazer pitched and rolled, narrowly avoiding an incoming plasma blast. The ship dove between two asteroids, using their bulk as a shield. Jax whooped. "That's what I'm talking about!" Jack's mind raced. They'd bought themselves time, but the Zurvrak still had superior firepower. One mistake, and they'd be space dust. Ben's voice cut through the chaos. "I have an idea," Jack swiveled. "Please tell me it's a good one." Ben typed rapidly into his console. "The Zurvrak rely heavily on AI-assisted targeting. What if I scramble their recognition systems?" Sarah blinked. "You mean hack their ships?" "Not exactly," Ben said. "But I can exploit their translation protocols. Make them think we have, I don't know, a planet-destroying weapon?" Jack's grin returned. "Do it." Ben worked quickly, sending a transmission coded in Zurvrak military cipher. On their screens, Kavaris's fleet paused. The incoming fire slowed. Jack leaned forward, reading the garbled response. The enemy was hesitating. Then, Kavaris's voice returned, this time lacking its earlier amusement. "Human? You claim to possess an Omega-class weapon?" Jack didn't blink. "Did I say that?" "Oh, must have been a glitch in translation." A tense silence. Jax chuckled under his breath. "Oh, he's sweating." Kavaris's ships shifted formation, suddenly more cautious. Their earlier bravado faded into uncertainty. Jack leaned back, satisfied. "Sarah, plot us an exit vector. Let's see if they want to chase a doomsday weapon." Sarah smirked. "On it." As the trailblazer turned away, the Zurvrak fleet remained still, unwilling to risk an attack. Jack let out a breath. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they'd done the impossible, held off a superior force with nothing but scrap metal, explosives, and human audacity. Now all they had to do was survive the next move. On the bridge, Captain Jack Reynolds watched the tactical display with measured calm. "They're still buying it," he murmured, noting the Zurvrak's reluctance to pursue. Dr. Ben Carter exhaled sharply. "For now. But the moment they figure out we don't actually have an Omega-class weapon, we're toast." Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, still wrestling with the ship's systems, snorted. "News flash, Ben. We're already toast. We're just stalling the toasting." Jax Dawson, the ship's ever-excitable gunner, leaned forward eagerly. "So, what's the plan? Because I'm fresh out of explosives, and I'm guessing diplomacy still isn't an option." Jack's lips quirked in amusement. "Not unless you consider running like hell a diplomatic maneuver." Sarah sighed. "Then we have a problem." She jabbed at the console. "Main thrusters are at 60%, and we've got microfractures in the hull from those near misses." She glanced up. "The trailblazer isn't built for prolonged chases." Jack rubbed his temple. The Zurvrak were patient hunters. Eventually, they'd call his bluff. He needed to turn hesitation into full retreat. His eyes flicked to the display, tracking the gas giant looming in the distance. A slow grin spread across his face. "Sarah, how much fuel do we have left?" She blinked. "Enough for a few more high-speed maneuvers. Why?" Jack pointed to the swirling storm clouds of the gas giant's upper atmosphere. "Because we're going in there," Ben choked. "Are you insane?" Jax grinned. "Oh, I love this plan." Sarah, rubbing her temples, groaned. "I hate this plan." Jack clapped his hands together. "All right, let's make some magic happen. Full burn toward that storm." The ship lurched as Sarah pushed the engines to their limit. The Zurvrak, sensing movement, finally broke formation and gave chase. Jack watched the display. 3 ships, faster and better armed, peeled away from the fleet and closed in. "Here they come," Jack said, already priming the few remaining functional weapons. "Ben," Jack said, "any chance you can keep them confused?" Ben's fingers danced over the console. "I can send them conflicting sensor data, maybe make it look like we're multiplying." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Multiplying?" Ben shrugged. "Look, their AI relies on pattern recognition. If I scramble that, I can make it seem like we have 3 ships instead of 1. Jack grinned. Perfect. Do it. As the trailblazer dove into the gas giant's atmosphere, the display flickered with false echoes. 3 separate signals, all mimicking the ship's movements. The Zurvrak ships hesitated. Their rigid AI-assisted tactics weren't built for uncertainty. Jax whooped. Ben, remind me to buy you a drink if we survive. Sarah gritted her teeth as the ship punched through the first layer of dense clouds. The hull vibrated under the pressure. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the swirling chaos. Jack leaned forward. How much deeper can we go before we start melting? Sarah's jaw tightened. We're skirting that line right now. Outside, the Zurvrak ships followed cautiously, unsure whether to risk pursuit. Come on, Jack muttered. Take the bait. Then, one ship dove after them. Jack smirked. Gotcha. Jax cracked his knuckles. Captain, permission to return fire? Jack's eyes gleamed. Granted. Jax didn't hesitate. The trailblazer rolled hard, bringing its remaining cannons to bear. A single, well-placed energy blast slammed into the pursuing Zurvrak ship's wing. The enemy vessel spun off course, losing control as the storm swallowed it whole. Sarah exhaled. One down. The other 2 Zurvrak ships immediately pulled back, unwilling to risk the storm. Jack grinned. And that makes 3. He turned to Ben. How long can you keep our sensor ghosts up? Ben checked his readings. Not long. They'll figure it out soon. Jack nodded. Then let's not give them the chance. Sarah glanced at him. Please tell me we're leaving. Jack smirked. We're leaving. The trailblazer tilted upward, rocketing back toward space. Behind them, the Zurvrak ships hesitated, unwilling to risk another costly mistake. As the trailblazer broke through the upper atmosphere, the Zurvrak fleet remained stationary, unwilling to pursue. Jack leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. All right, folks, let's get the hell out of here. Ben let out a nervous laugh. I can't believe that actually worked. Jax clapped a hand on Ben's shoulder. Never doubt human ingenuity, Doc. Sarah shook her head. Never doubt human stupidity either. Jack grinned, tapping the intercom. All hands, stand down. We just made the impossible look easy. As the trailblazer sped toward the stars, Jack stole one last glance at the Zurvrak fleet. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were afraid to follow. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, slumped over her console, groaned. Fun? We barely made it out in one piece. Jack grinned. But we did make it out. Dr. Ben Carter, still adjusting his glasses, shook his head. I'm honestly in shock. We bluffed an entire fleet with fake sensor signals, jury-rigged weapons, and a nearly broken ship. Jax Dawson cracked his knuckles. Don't forget the part where we dropped mining explosives like space depth charges. That was my favorite part. Sarah sighed. And now the question is, what now? Jack's expression turned serious. We go back. The bridge fell silent. Ben blinked. I'm sorry, what? Jack turned to him. We go back to Rhea 7. Sarah looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Jack, in case you missed it, we barely got away. The Zurvrak still have a full fleet sitting there. Jack's voice hardened. Exactly. And right now they're hesitating. We scared them. We made them think we had some kind of super weapon. They're second-guessing themselves. Ben hesitated. But that won't last. Jack nodded. Exactly. Which is why we hit them before they figure it out. Jax let out a low whistle. Oh, now we're talking. Sarah rubbed her temples. This is insane. Jack leaned forward. No, this is strategy. The Zurvrak are cautious by nature. They rely on overwhelming force and clean victories. If they think we might have something devastating, they won't want to risk losing. He pointed to the display. But if we just run, they'll realize we were bluffing, regroup, and wipe out every last survivor on Rhea 7. Ben exhaled. So we have to make them believe the bluff again. Jack smirked. Exactly. And this time, we sell it even harder. Sarah groaned. I can't believe I'm agreeing to this. Jack turned to Jax. What's still in our arsenal? Jax checked his readouts. 2 missiles, both iffy, energy cannons, functional but low on power, and, he brightened. A cargo bay full of scrap metal. Jack raised an eyebrow. Scrap metal? Jax grinned. Oh, yeah. If we launch it at high speed, we can make it look like shrapnel from an explosion. Combine that with a well-timed fake detonation in the Zurvrak comms, and they might think we detonated a real superweapon. Jack's grin widened. Jax, remind me to promote you. Ben looked skeptical. And what happens if they call our bluff this time? Jack's expression turned steely. Then we fight. Sarah exhaled. All right, let's do this before I come to my senses. The return to Rhea 7. The Trailblazer looped back toward Rhea 7, slipping just into sensor range of the Zurvrak fleet. The enemy ships remained still, wary, but not yet retreating. Jack tapped the comms. Ben, let's sell the act. Ben nodded, fingers flying across his console. He piggybacked on Zurvrak encryption channels, broadcasting a distorted transmission. On their screens, the enemy fleet suddenly picked up ghost signals, as if something massive was charging in the system. Kavaris's face flickered onto the main display, his mandibles twitching with unease. Human, you return, even after I allowed you to flee? Jack leaned back, feigning casual confidence. Flee? Oh, Overlord, we weren't running, we were waiting. Kavaris's head tilted. Waiting? Jack smiled. Did you think we'd risk using an Omega-class weapon near our own colony? No, we lured you away. Now the weapon is fully primed. Jax hit the release. A barrage of high-speed debris ejected from the cargo bay, scattering in all directions. At the same moment, Ben triggered a false explosion signature in the Zurvrak sensor feed. Kavaris's eyes widened as his screens showed a phantom detonation, one that didn't actually exist. The Zurvrak fleet immediately adjusted formation, several ships pulling back in alarm. Jack leaned forward, voice calm but edged with warning. You know what this means, don't you? Kavaris hesitated. You are bluffing. Jack grinned. Try me. The Overlord stared at him for a long moment. Then, the Zurvrak fleet shifted. One by one, their ships turned away from Rhea 7, slipping back into FTL formation. Retreating, Ben's jaw dropped. It worked. Jack's fist pumped. Damn right it did. Sarah let out a shaky breath. I don't believe it. They actually ran. Jack's grin never wavered. They thought we were weak. They thought we were nothing but a rusty old ship with no teeth. He watched as the Zurvrak warped out, leaving Rhea 7 behind. Jack exhaled. They'll be back one day. Ben nodded. But next time we won't need to bluff. Jack's grin turned sharp. Number next time, we'll be ready. The UHS Trailblazer turned toward Rhea 7, the battered little ship returning victorious.